What is the darkest, most disgusting secret in your past? NSWNSFL. One time in college I was drinking with friends who proceeded to shame me after I passed out in their company. Besides the usual stuff, like drawing on my face in permanent marker and pouring beer on me, they filled my ears with ketchup and mustard, and I think one of them peed on me. In any case, after talking to them the next day, I figured out it was mainly the work of two guys who were roommates. I laugh it off and pretend it didn't bother me, even though it took weeks to get all the crap out of my ears. So the day everyone left for our 3-week winter break, I urinated in a thin metal tray and put it in the freezer. After it froze, I emptied it to get a solid sheet of frozen pee, and I slid it under their dorm room door. Fast forward 3 weeks, and their entire dorm room smelled like pee, and I heard their carpet was technically alive. To make it even better, maintenance didn't get around to replacing the carpet for about a week after classes started up again, and the guys were charged damages. No one figured out how it was done, since the only people that had access to the dorm rooms were the RAs. Whoa, I can't tell if that is horrible or awesome. I'm gonna go with awesome. 4 years ago I found my girlfriend on the floor of her bathroom after having shot herself. We were pretty much inseparable for quite a few years, so people tend to bring up whatever happened to her a lot. Because of that, I actually have a somewhat elaborate lie that I tell people so I don't have to tell them the truth. This is really terrible, but I kind of want to hear the lie. When I was 12 I went to my grandpa's house, and since he was a hunter at the time he had this huge butt stuffed bear, but it was empty with a hole in its back. I thought it would be funny to climb inside and be a bear. So I got inside, and as soon as I got inside, my grandpa and some of his friends that had come over that day entered the room where the bear and I was. I waited for what felt like an hour as they discussed guns and bears and crap. I got bored and, being a 12-year-old who had just discovered the wonders of fapping, had the idea to rub one out inside the freaking bear. Once I had finished the dark deed inside the bear, I accidentally bumped into the wall the bear was near. Grandpa heard it and pulled me out with my pants around my legs and a boner in full view of his friends. We never spoke of it ever again. TLDR. I came inside a bear and my grandpa found me. I've never told anyone this, although if I did it wouldn't be much of a secret. This is also a throwaway and I'm probably not going to look at the comments, but just writing it even to an anonymous group of people seems relieving. Well, about 2 years ago an old friend of mine and I've known this person since just about birth, got very drunk at a friend's party. We hadn't seen each other in ages because we both moved away from home many years ago. I had just come out of a long relationship, and she was just about to get married. Long story short, we got really drunk and ended up sleeping together. We both felt bad about it, partially because we were sort of like siblings growing up together, and also because she was in a long-term committed relationship about 1 month from getting married. The month goes by and we talk occasionally, but we go our separate ways. She gets married. I go about my life. One afternoon, though only a month after that, I'm out with some friends and a buddy from back home calls me up and tells me she committed suicide. There was no warning of anything. Everyone was completely caught by surprise. I'm obviously distraught by this since we were so close. When I drove back to my house I checked my computer and saw a message from her. She told me how she felt trapped in her relationship and that she wasn't being honest to her husband. She said she wished we talked more, that things went differently in our lives, and that our experience had more meaning than just being some drunken mistake. She told me she cared about me deeply. It was the last thing she wrote to anyone. That hurts deep, and has been like an anchor dragging on the ocean floor for the past 26 months of my life. Thank you for reading this. I'm 21. First week in my new apartment, I take a shower and walk to my clothes hamper in the nude. I let out your typical fart and somehow end up crapping in the floor while just standing there. That fart betrayed me. I did this in a hotel room in Singapore, in front of my girlfriend, now ex-girlfriend. So I was about 8 and I just figured out that grinding my dong on things felt good, but I was searching for something better. I came up with this brilliant idea. I went outside and found the family dog, took him to my room. He was a one big Great Dane. He really liked ketchup, so I took a bunch and put it on my dong. A few weeks later we had a daily licking session. My mama walked in on me one time. I've suddenly felt the most surreal adrenaline rush run through me with shame and embarrassment. I thought I would have received the beating of a lifetime. Instead, my mom laughed uncontrollably for a few minutes as I was crying out of shame. She didn't do anything to me, but she did say, when you grow up, you better have enough money to pay my rent. Haha, your mom had an awesome response. My freshman year of high school, I went on a trip to Disney World with the marching band. We were on our way to ride Splash Mountain when I realized that I really needed to take a crap. I was too shy to ask my entire group of friends to take a bathroom break so I could poop. So I just squeezed my cheeks and hoped that I could hold it all in until someone else needed to go to the bathroom. We were about halfway there when I decided that it would be safe to squeeze out a little fart to take some of the pressure off my bowels. Worst decision ever. What I thought would be a tiny discreet fart turned into a full-sized turd erupting into my undies. Luckily, the turd was pretty firm and dry, so it just kinda sat there, cradled in the crotch of my underwear for a few seconds. Then, with a swift adjustment of my underwear, the log just rolled out of my skirt and plopped to the ground. I looked back about 5 seconds later and the crap was gone. Some park sanitation ninja must have scooped it up about as soon as it hit the ground. As far as I know, none of my friends noticed, but I always wonder if at least one of them will forever remember me as that girl who crap in the middle of Disney World. So, yep, I took a crap in Disney World in high school because I was too afraid to ask my friends to stop for a bathroom break. This isn't really that dark or anything, but it is pretty hilarious. So my uncles all hunt and they would go to a taxidermist and get some of the things stuffed. I was about 7 or 8, and they brought home these 2 huge stuffed bears. Not stuffed toys or anything, actual stuffed bears. And they were posed to stand and got set up in the playroom at my grandmother's. I don't really remember what my thought or motivation behind it was, but I have a distinct memory of sitting on the floor cross-legged, and this bear's private area was right in my face. And for whatever the freaking reason, I was like, oh crap, what is that little nub? I'm going to wrap my lips around it. About 20 seconds later I realize it was a dong and then freak out because I thought I was pregnant. TLDR. Sucked a stuffed bear's dong and thought I was pregnant. And that is how teddy bears are made. When I was younger, it would have been year 5 or 6 of primary school, I had this weird sorta had this gay thing with another boy. I think it was attention seeking at first. We'd kiss to gross the other kids out, just on the cheeks, but occasionally on the lips. This all culminated in something rather strange. He was round my house, and we were kissing a bit, I remember. Yep, I must be B, and I had this sleeping bag. What we did was go into my bathroom and get into the sleeping bag together. At some point we decided that we were going to touch Will's. I remember saying I was going to get completely naked for this act. He was a bit more shy and only lowered his trousers. So we lay in the sleeping bag pressing our boners together. We did this for a minute or so when my mum knocked on the bathroom door saying she needed the toilet. The amount of time it took for me to get my clothes back on, I imagine I was obvious something strange was up. I can only imagine my mum's face now as we both walked out awkwardly carrying a sleeping bag. I feel kinda weird about it as the boy took a turn for the worse recently. He's got some mental problem. He seems disturbed, and to this date I've never done anything with another boy. No one ever mentions my gay period in primary school. Maybe no one remembers, or I have friends good enough to not give me crap for it. First time I've ever said all this. When I was in the 6th grade, there was a girl in my class named Gina who was horrible to me. She constantly made fun of me. I was a shy, bookish girl, and once even had a birthday party and invited everyone in my class except for me. In the 6th grade we had a project called Egg Babies. Basically we all got a hard-boiled egg that we had to treat like a baby, make a little nest basket for it and take care of it. We weren't supposed to even leave it out of our sight. The idea being to teach us responsibility. Apparently our class was dicking around too much with the egg babies, so our teacher told us that at the end of the week, if our egg was cracked, we would get an F. One day while the class was out at recess, I was allowed to come back into the classroom to get my inhaler. Gina had left her egg inside the classroom. I looked around, then walked over to her egg, and tapped it on the desk, breaking the bottom. Then I put it back in her basket and went back out to recess. Gina ended up failing the project because her egg was broken. She was really pissed off. I never told anyone, and I still don't regret it. Frick you, Gina. Frick you, Gina. When I was about 7 or 8, my grandmother, through my mother, who I'd never met, came to visit. My mother had recently divorced and times were rough, so her estranged mother visiting was her only bright point in recent months. Being the misfit I was, when the adults were outside I rummaged through my grandmother's things. I found a weird device that, when squeezed, shot out a puff of wet air. I now know it was a rescue inhaler. I played with it until it went empty, and so it was boring. Later that day, the family was outside and my grandmother, who I assume had COPD or something, had a terrible coughing fit and collapsed to her knees. She grabbed her rescue inhaler, squeezed, and obviously nothing came out. The next thing I know, her face turned blue and her blood vessels were clearly visible from the lack of air and the coughing. Apparently the stress from the coughing fit caused a blood vessel to rupture in her head. The EMTs said she was dead before she hit the ground. I have always wondered if I should tell my mother that I may have killed her mother on accident, but I'm terrified of what she might think of me. This was about 19 years ago. TLDR. I very likely killed my own grandmother. I realize that this incident was not really my fault. This one event has been a source of immense guilt for most of my life. Thanks to some helpful and professional insight I could not have gotten by talking to those close to me, it is like an immense burden has been lifted from me. Love you, Reddit. When I was 7, I counted up all my change in my piggy bank to open a bank account. My mom decided to exchange my coins with her bills, letting me grab it from her purse before I went to the bank. In her wallet was more money than I had ever seen in my life, $30, and I took an extra 20 on the sly. She didn't notice until the next day at work when she discovered it missing. She accused her co-worker, who was in the midst of having a mental breakdown, of stealing it, who rightly flipped out over the accusation. Their boss tried to mediate but ended up firing the co-worker over losing control of their anger. I hear the story that evening in horror and throw the $20 in the garbage. I never told a soul. I stole $60 from my mother when I was young and was so guilty about it that I used it to buy her a birthday present. She never said she knew, but she knew. This past New Year's I went out with my cousin to go see Laid Back Luke at Pasha in NYC. We ended up getting really trashed because we had free drinks for a few hours there. We both took some Molly after a few hours and we both started rolling and were feeling amazing. Next thing I know, my cousin starts grinding on me, and I grabbed her and started dancing with her. She reached up and grabbed the back of my neck while turning her head and kissed me while we were dancing. Not having a care in the world, I tried reaching up under her dress without any hesitations. Not only did she not jump, she moved down onto my fingers. We continued this until the end of the night while also doing another Molly each. After we left, we took a cab to the hotel that we were staying at. We ended up fricking that night. Waking up in the afternoon the next day was really awkward as we no longer had the drugs and alcohol in our system. We talked about what happened, agreed that it ended up being a really fun night, but that it could never happen again and that from then on we would never talk about it. Somehow I'm surprised that this username was still available. When I was a child, I lived in a foster home. I had my own room, with a TV, and every day I came home from school and watched Fox's Funhouse. Had me a crush on Mr. J.D. Roth. One day another girl came and moved into my room. I wouldn't have minded except she was mean and controlling and wouldn't let me watch my beloved show. One day she told me that her mom actually lived a few blocks away from our house, and I convinced her to run away. I didn't realize at the time that runaways ended up getting sent to a group home. I just knew that I wanted her gone. It's been almost 20 years since that happened and I still feel terrible. I hope she is okay. JD Roth here. I respect you for what you did. That kid sounds like a tool. I haven't told this to anyone but my older sister. Growing up as a kid in Colombia, I was born into a passion for football, soccer, not seen in many places, especially America. Back when I was born, Colombia was still a developing country and the ski industry was at its peak. There were two main teams in the capital city, one called Millonarios, the other Calle Santafe. Millenarius was the color blue, and Santa Fe was red. As you may assume, they were rivals. But what I didn't know as a kid was that out of both teams, the so-called hardcore fans became actual violent gangs which spread throughout the whole city. Our color was blue. The other team's color was red, so as you can imagine, this was a Crip versus Blood type of scenario. All of my older cousins were part of the designated gang of our team, and I was the youngest one as I was pulled into the gang, but as you can imagine, I had no idea what went on. All I remember was being at parties with my cousins, just sitting in the corner playing with toys and seeing a bunch of people with blue shirts and blue bandanas. One day when I was 3, we were walking in the barrio, the hood, the ghetto, in a group of almost 15. I was sitting on my cousin's, then 19 years old, shoulders when I heard the first gunshot. Quickly I feel my cousin's hand slap my face as he quickly grabs my head and pulls me close to him. I felt every step he took go through my body as he ran, and he ran a lot. Finally he put me behind a really big trash can which was against a wall. He told me to cover my ears and close my eyes, that no matter what happens, what I hear, what I smell, no matter what, I shouldn't open my eyes or uncover my ears. He looks at me, kisses my forehead and runs away. I was crying as you may imagine, and I rocked back and for putting my hands against my ears and closing my eyes so tight they hurt. I didn't know how long it has been, but I decided to look for my cousin. I see many dead bodies and blood for the first time in my life. Remember, I was 3. I stuck my head out to the side of the trash can and saw my cousin being stabbed multiple times in his chest. And that's when the police sirens became audible, as the gang members of the opposite side begin to run, and my cousin bleeds to death. Our eyes met. He smiled, and before I could smile back, I felt a female police officer grabbing me, throwing me in her car and driving off. I don't remember much of that ride or the few days after. I'll just never forget that day, that last smile. To this day I wish I could give everything I've ever had, just to be able to smile back. Let him know just how much I loved him. He was more than just a cousin. He was my big brother, and I'll never forget him. R.I.P. Sounds to me like the last thing your cousin saw was you being safely taken away by a police officer. I'm sure he went in peace after seeing that. I used to be a Mormon. That's not it. And I had to attend seminary classes at church every school day at 5 a.m. One day I went into the church bathroom to take a crap when this other guy in my class comes in. He must not have noticed I was sitting in the stall, because I heard him unzip his pants in the urinal stall right next to me and thapping noises. Thap as in flicking his dong with his fingers. He said, "Hey, wake up, wake up." Then he proceeded to masturbate for about 5 minutes and said, "Yeah, that's it. Now get back in there." He zipped his pants and left. That's not all. I was mortified at the same time as almost laughing my butt off. I was too embarrassed to call him out on it while I was on the toilet. I got up, washed my hands, went out of the bathroom, and he was about 10 feet away. He looked back. I never felt so embarrassed for another human being in my life. I never talked to him about it or anyone else, but he knows. And I know what he did those early mornings at the church. AMA request for that guy. I know his first name and saw him at Walmart once recently. This being 10 years later. TLDR. Listened to someone masturbate next to me when I was 14 in the most awkward, creepy way. I had fricked at 4 for the first time. Basically we were just playing doctor and we understood that me and her, same age and height, could have intercourse standing. So, yes, you can have an erection at 4. Yes, I did penetrate her. I just inserted my dong in her fanny 2-3 times a day and left it there. We did this for 2 summers and then she had a vaginitis, so she told the doctor about it. In fact, the whole neighborhood knew it by the end of the summer. 25 years after, we are still very embarrassed of this when we cross each other. When I was around 8 years old, I would go to my pool with my brother, around 12 at the time, and he'd make me do things I didn't know were bad. I'm talking about masturbating him and stuff like that. Since I thought my brother was cool, I'd do what he said to try and be like him. Once we started growing up, he stopped doing it and we never spoke about it and still haven't talked about it. I'm 21 now. Then, when I was 14 or 15 I had no friends, had never kissed a girl and had a lot of doubt about fricking and females. I did almost the same thing my brother did to me to my little sister who was like 8 or 9 at the time. When I started to understand what the frick I was doing I freaked out and got depressed for a few years. I have never ever talked with my sister about this either, she's 15 now. Now every freaking time I remember this I want to just shoot myself because I feel so bad for what I did. All this crap also made me disgusted of girls. In fact I didn't had a girlfriend until last year and didn't frick until a month ago. I'd like to talk to them sometime but I don't know if anything good would come out of it, so I haven't. I'm the only person who knows this and I think it's gonna stay like that until I die. I don't know what gets to me more, your story or your username. I like poop. This is all in all a really long story that I can't explain now, but I was in Norway at the time, living on the land, eating berries and fish mostly. There was a small community nearby, perhaps a mile down the coast of the lake I was on. I had been doing a huge amount of work for a few days building the frame of a boat I was making and learning new fishing tactics, so when I heard that some hunters had brought in some elk, similar to moose, I headed down to the lodge to get what I could. It was agreed that I would skin them in exchange for the hides, heads and lower legs while the hunters would keep everything else, which is all the meat essentially. This was a pretty great trade since I needed a hide for the boat anyway. I hate to think what the hunters thought of me. They were there with their super expensive, top of the line equipment and then there was me, starving and stinking of fish. After everything was done they threw in one of the hearts, which is pretty good meat. The mistake I made was drastically underestimating how hard it would be to get all this stuff back. I had to drag it on a tarp back through a mile of marsh and woodland. We're talking about the weight of a big man. After about 40 minutes the exhaustion got the better of me. I'd already had to abandon one of the heads after only 5 minutes or so, and half delirious with hunger I broke down. I couldn't light a fire because my materials were back at camp and the ground was too wet anyway. It may have been possible to make a bow drill but I didn't have the energy and it takes an hour too, and that's without having to get the dang thing to work. I made a choice to do what it took to get the energy I needed. I took the heart, which was about the size of my own head, and then I ate as much as I could stand. The taste, strangely enough, is fine. It tastes of nothing, but the amount of blood was horrible. That's the most terrible thing I have done. It was still warm. TLDR. I sat on the bank of a lake and eat a fresh, warm elk heart to survive. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.